Hi, welcome back to Cybersecurity for Everyone. I'm Dr. Charles Harry. In our last episode, we talked about criminal organizations. And in this episode, I want to switch our conversation to a different type of threat actor, the hacktivists. So as a reminder, cybersecurity concerns around a variety of different threat actors. And threat actors leverage vulnerabilities. They're exploited by those hackers, either acting alone or as part of a broader collective organization. They absolutely leverage their skill and resources to achieve a specific end effect, and they're motivated by different things. So who are the hacktivists? You might be curious about the term hacktivists. Well, they're really activists who use hacking to achieve a particular set of objectives. They're often focused on a set of political, economic, or even social concerns. Their skill level really does vary. For the most part, hacktivists tend to use low-level capabilities like website defacement and denial of service attacks. They tend to act either independently or as part of a broader collective. They use an awful lot of off-the-shelf capability. And the targets may include not just governments, but also corporations and even specific individuals. And this is really important. They're not aligned with any one specific ideology or even government. So we see hacktivists that are hacking on behalf of a specific government, acting in more of a nationalist point of view, as well as hacktivists that are more focused on a specific idea. Concepts of ecological conservation, for instance, would be one example. So let's talk specifically about their motives. In some cases, hacktivists will engage in hacking activity out of social justice concerns. Maybe there's a particular issue that's affected a particular community and they're upset by it. So they'll engage in hacking activity, defacements, denial of service attacks, to emphasize their displeasure at that particular issue. They may also take action concerning political actions taken by specific governments, ones that are specifically counter to the hacktivists' agenda. One example might be something along the lines of governments who are engaging in free trade agreements. There might be a hacktivist organization who thinks that that's a terrible idea, as it leads to exploitation of labor. So therefore, they engage in a hacking campaign to voice their displeasure. But it could also include things like environmental concerns. If there are concerns that specific corporations are not taking the issue of climate change seriously and are concerned about their carbon footprint, you might actually see hacktivists engaging in hacking activity. So this is a different set of motives than what we've seen with criminal actors and hobbyists. Let's talk a little bit about their tools. So just like with hobbyists, hacktivists tend to use a lot of the standard tool set that we find in the Kali Linux build. They use a lot of standard tools for reconnaissance, as well as for exploitation of those devices. Even for their basic tactics and tools for delivery, they're using standard capabilities. So that's an important differentiator from criminal organizations or even nation states. So what kind of attacks do we normally see with hacktivists? Well, we oftentimes see available information disclosed, and oftentimes that information is actually publicly available. So they'll do research, for instance, on particular individuals and publish things like their address or their phone number, or maybe pictures that are found on their social media account. So nothing that's really terribly sophisticated. Sometimes they will gain access to specific accounts and also publish information that is not publicly available. We oftentimes see hacktivists engaged in defacements, it's kind of graffiti on a website. And we also see denial of service attacks. So these three broad level of effects are typically what we see with hacktivist campaigns: exposure of information, defacement of websites, and denial of service attacks. So let's take one example of a hacktivist collective, Anonymous. So Anonymous is a hacktivist collective, basically comprising of individual hackers that are loosely aligned around a particular worldview. So remember, these are not individuals that work for a government or a criminal organization. They're individuals who believe very strongly in a particular set of issues. It could be a social justice issue, it could be an economic issue, or environmental issue. They focus their hacking activity by loosely surrounding it around something like a campaign. So they focus on a particular issue like countering a terrorist narrative. They organize their activity around campaigns. So an example might be a hacktivist organization that wants to counter a terrorist narrative. They would organize themselves and their activities around countering that narrative. They primarily focus on things like identity exposure, website defacements, and denial of service attacks. So if Anonymous, for instance, had concerns around, let's say, a terrorist organization like ISIS, they may focus on trying to identify ISIS members and publicizing their identities. That would be an example of an effect that Anonymous would have. And so very specific examples of these campaigns would be things like Operation KKK, which was focused around exposing members of the Ku Klux Klan. They also focused their ires, in some occasions, against specific governments. In this particular case, Op Saudi was a set of operations specifically targeting the Saudi government and engaged in website defacements and in denial of service attacks. So some examples of infamous hacktivist groups would include, of course, Anonymous, Chaos Computer Club, Legion of Doom, Masters of Deception, and Lizard Squad. You gotta really like these names, and hacking organizations tend to like their creative names. So when we take a look at the broad set of effects that hacktivists are having, they're primarily looking to make a statement. And we see attacks going against primarily things like government websites and organizations. But it also includes professional and scientific organizations and even the finance and insurance community. So hacktivists are primarily interested in a broad set of social issues that include things like social justice, but also include issues like the environment or economics. So it's difficult to group all hacktivists into the same set of individuals. So what are the takeaways? So hacktivists have a range of skills, but they primarily focus on these low-level capabilities: website defacements, denial of service attacks, and exposure of identities. They are motivated by political, social, and environmental issues. They tend to focus on relatively easy things to execute. They primarily focus on exposing information, defacing websites, and denial of service attack. And they're really not bound by any single ideology. In our next episode, we're going to talk about advanced persistent threats and the real challenge that they present to broader society. I hope to see you next time.